So what was number two? We have six of them. So let's start
Yeah.
with number two.
So, number two is fostering self help skills. So, this could look like teaching basic tasks. For example, like encouraging your child maybe to dress themselves, packing their school lunch. Or their school bag, maybe tidying up their belongings independently. So, let's say setting an alarm and saying, okay, you have 15 minutes. Why don't you clean up as much as you can in your bedroom, right? And seeing how they start to navigate that. I think a lot of times, again, we're talking so much about communication and how we're so dependent on our parents, but in many other aspects, we're dependent on our parents for other things too. And for some reason, in this population, I think because we're so dependent on our parents from a communication standpoint, a lot of those other needs start to also become necessary too. I also think just it's age appropriate to depend on our parents, so thinking about those type of aspects and just like Dr. E mentioned, what could be just like one or two things that we can start to almost pass the baton on to our child. And again, you're still helping them navigate it too, right? Like maybe you're sitting in the room with them at first, or maybe you start by packing, the school lunch with them and you're showing them the different choices. You're asking them, do you want the tuna fish or the turkey, right? And they're starting with encouraging the decision, right? Or the choice. And then maybe the next time you say, I'm going to stand back while I watch you pack your lunch. And then maybe the next time they do it on their own. So it could actually be a gradual shift too, showing them that you are still there, you're still supporting them, but you're also allowing them to now make that decision.
You made some really good points. A lot of times when we're sitting here talking about fostering self-help skills, encouraging decision making, and then of course the other types of ways to foster independence that we're going to talk about, we understand that many of the kids really have a tough time just doing that, right? Like go clean your room or make your lunch or pack your bag for gymnastics or Kumon or whatever it is you're doing, or do your homework and without have constant reminders. We understand that. So you do need to break it up into steps. And one thing I've always said to families is you got to think of like going from the first floor to the second floor. Maybe there's 20 steps, right? You need to take the first five or six and divide them up into many. And once you get to the sixth step, you can probably run right up. But it's okay to break things up in steps. And that's one of the beauties of the bridge for social communication. We break it down. And even with the transitional to a verbal, we're breaking that down into many different steps. We're making more columns to be able to increase the distance of an intermediary, or to sound shaping them into words, or a mom has to help hand over, take over, and together, hand over hand versus moving their hand to their elbow. Some kids can just do it. So I think it's really important for our listeners to know is we need to meet them where they're at. I need to repeat that. We meet them where they're at so that they gain that confidence to be able to move forward. When you don't meet them and you're too far ahead expecting them to be there, you actually cause more anxiety and more avoidance. If you are too far behind and do everything for them, then they're just going to feel like incapable, right? Like they're not going to be able to do it. Either way, they're going to feel incapable and not independent. So we have to meet them where they're at and then move. And I would say that, routines such as schedules, getting up in the morning, brushing your teeth, getting dressed, having breakfast, checking it off, maybe the night before we have a checklist, like, so a daily checklist of like things that they need to do when they do their homework in there.
Mhm.
Maybe they have a checklist of what's included in their bag for gymnastics, right? It's not just my gymnastics outfit. Maybe it's my, shoes. Maybe it's my outfit. Maybe it's a headband. Creating that list that they check off where they help you, not you do it,
Mhm.
where they do it through pictures, drawing, writing their list. So packing their backpack, packing their lunch, even making their own sandwiches. These are things that, as subtle as they are, and as much as someone might be go, oh, come on, just give me some strategies to get my kid to talk. I'm
Mhm.
just letting you know that independence is often one of the key factors into more rapid progression into communication or
Yeah.
social engagement and communication versus a child that's not.
Mhm.
So what are some others?
Yeah.
So we talked about the like kind of the lists, the schedules of the day. What other thoughts do you have?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just going to echo that. I think that that's a really, really big one, especially for our kids when we think about the whys of SM, especially for our kids that might have some learning challenges. There are a lot of comorbidities between ADHD and SM. And so, if that is the case, just having like a daily calendar, like Dr. Reese said, where you can have a child check it off, or for a little one, maybe they put a sticker every morning that they take their bath and they brush their teeth. That actually helps with executive functioning. And so it's actually just a really important life skill in general, but then you're still passing the baton and fostering the independence. So all of those things are really, really, really important to just keep in mind. And a lot of times we'll ask parents, let's say for those listeners that do keep a daily calendar, imagine if we took your daily calendar and we said, okay, we're not going to give this to you till the end of the week, and we want you to navigate, and we'll tell you when you have to be somewhere. And we've seen reactions from parents, and they're like, wait a minute, I would lose my mind. I need my daily calendar. I need to know where I'm going to be, when I'm going to be there. And many of our kids feel that too. There's a lot of kids that they need that predictability. They need to see where they're going to be, what that's going to look like. And so all of those are just really helpful keys.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think for our listeners, because with each question, I want to give them something to think about. What new skill can your child start practicing this week? Even if it takes time and patience to figure that out. Like you really need to think about it. This is also where decision making can come into play, where you kind of talk about not you need to build independence or be less dependent on me, because that's kind of like uncomfortable. But it's more of, hey, let's have some ways where we're like, kind of, I call it like doing things on my own. Whether maybe you have a 7-year old and like big girl things, big boy things, things I'm doing, things I'm helping my sibling with, things that they can be in charge of. And so then you may have some like extra bonus ones. So they can be choosing this.